Hey guys, today we're in the book of Genesis, chapter 30. So now we have Jacob married to two women, Leah and Rachel, each having a female servant. Leah has had four kids, and now we continue the rest of this crazy soap opera, right? So it says, when Rachel saw that she was not bearing children, she said to Jacob, "Give me children, or I shall die." She was the most beautiful, she was the most loved, but notice she was still in despair. Beauty and love is not everything, okay? It's truly not everything. And so we can see that she was in despair. She was in so much despair that she took her servant, Bilhah, and said, "Sleep with Jacob." And so Jacob and Bilhah get together and they have relations and they have a child. Notice though in verse 3 it says that "Hear my servant Bilhah, go into her so that she may give birth on my behalf." In your translations it may say that she may give birth on my knees. Back in the ancient Near East, it was very common for surrogate mothers that they would sit on the lap of the adoptive mother during the insemination and during the birth. So when the baby came out, it fell on the adoptive mother's lap, meaning it is her child. Okay, so we'll see this multiple times as we read through the Old Testament. Just wanted to for you to understand what that means. And they go and they have a son and they name him Dan. And then Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again, and he had another son, Nephtali. And then Leah saw that she had ceased in bearing children, so she took her servant Zilpah. So here she had four. Rachel uh, could not have kids, so she gave up her servant and have two. And now we go back to Leah, and she knows she's done having children, so she gives up her servant. And notice what it says: gave her in verse 9 that she gave Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. It doesn't mean that they were truly married, it just means that they were together like a husband and a wife. Then Leah's servant bore a son named Gad, and then she bore another, and it was named Asher. And so now, up to this point, we can see that we have 8 sons. Verse 14, in the days of the wheat harvest, Reuben, which was one of the first son, went out and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Now, this isn't Harry Potter, okay? Mandrake is in Hebrew means love apple. It's a root that was thought of to increase fertility. Now, we don't know if it truly worked or not, if it was a placebo effect, but in those days, it was very much sought after and thought of to increase vitality. So he comes back, gives it to his mother Leah, and Rachel says, "Hey, can I have some of them?" Notice what happens in verse 15. She said to her, "It is a small matter that you have taken away my husband." We can see here that there is much hostility between Leah and Rachel. And so she said, "No, not absolutely not." So Leah uh, ate this and then went to her husband and said, "Hey, I ate some mandrakes." And so they had another son named Issachar. And Leah conceived again, and she bore him a sixth son. Uh, and Leah said, and she named him Zebulon, right? And afterwards, she bore a daughter and named her Dinah. Now, Dinah has no really big name, but we can see a change here. So, up to this point, there has been 10 sons born between the collective 4 women, the 2 wives and the 2 servants of the 2 wives, and a daughter. His first daughter was the 11th pregnancy. And so there's 10 sons and 1 daughter. Then, verse 22, then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. She conceived and bore a son, and God had taken away my reproach, and she named him Joseph. We're gonna learn a lot about this one named Joseph. And as soon as Rachel had born Joseph, Jacob went back to Laban. He's been there for over 14 years now. And he basically says, hey, send me back to the promised land. Isaac knew his home was not in Babylon, was not in Ur Chaldeans. His land was in the promised land. Jacob wanted to go back home. And so basically Laban said, hey, I don't think so. I mean, you've been with me. And as much as you've been with me, you have blessed me. You've grown my flocks, my servants, you've grown everything. So as the Lord is blessing you, he's blessing me. Hey, I really don't want you to go. And so Jacob says, well, here's the deal, right? Here's the deal. We're going to do this, but I need more money than just working for you. I need to be able to support my big growing family, right? My 2 wives, their 2 servants, my sons, my daughters. And so he says, here's the deal. Let's separate your flocks. I've grown your flocks. We're going to separate them, right? You keep all of the solid color animals, all the white, all the black, all the brown. You keep all the solid. I'm going to keep the ones that are speckled, that are white and black, white and brown, black and brown. I'm going to keep those. So you keep all the solid color. I'll keep all the multicolored. And Laban was like, man, that's a great deal, because a solid colored animal was worth 2 or 3 times more than a speckled colored animal. Okay. And so here Jacob says, I'll take the least and I'll give you the more, but I will keep working both of them, right? But I'm going to take my flock. We're going to move away, but I will still help you tend your flock. So now we have Jacob and his flock of spotted and speckled animals, and then we have Laban's flock that are the solid colored animals. And it says that he moved 3 days away so that they could be separated. But it says, but Jacob pastured the rest of Laban's flocks, right? So they moved 3 days away, but Jacob was still tending to both flocks. But he did not want them, he wanted them separated, his animals and Laban's animals. And so all of this happens, but notice what happens. We don't know if God told Jacob to do this, or if Jacob did this on faith and God blessed this, but he started putting some white branches into the feeding troughs, and it started to bless the spotted flocks, and they started to have more children and more children and more children. And then he started to breed the best animals with the best animals and creating an even better pedigree. And when the solid color, when Laban's flocks would come up, he would remove those sticks. So he's tending to them, and the solid color animals, they're doing what they do naturally. But him on faith with these white stalks in the water troughs, he is raising a supernatural flock, right? This kind of flock that's growing above and beyond and bigger and stronger and multiplying at a much greater rate. So he is growing his herd at a much greater rate than Laban's flocks. In verse 43, it says, thus the man increased greatly and had large flocks. He had female servants, male servants, camels, and donkeys. And we can see that the faith and the actions of his faith produced him a better blessing than what Laban was doing. And so where's Jesus in this? The simple fact that faith alone is dead. Faith with works is what produces salvation. We have to have actions to our faith. And so here in faith, he believed and trusted in God, and God blessed him through his actions that would increase him to a place where he will be able to leave in the next couple chapters. Hope that makes sense. We will see you tomorrow in chapter 31. God bless.